Away from that, let's piggyback, or better still, let's come back to one of the biggest stories making the headlines this morning. President Bwala Tinubu's Special Advisor on Media and Policy Communication, Mr. Daniel Bwala, is still in the news. Now, of course, the criticisms haven't stopped coming concerning what many have tagged the most embarrassing interview to be on television ever. While critics have argued that when it comes to Nigeria, the political representatives do not allow the Nigerian journalists to dig deeper. Rather, they become antagonists, or rather they become heated up in annoyance or argument. But when it comes to the international scene, they cower and listen carefully like they never did anything.
But Nigerians have said that he struggled under fact-checking, he dodged key questions and parodied half-truths. The backlash has been swift, with many wondering if this reflects a deeper problem in how the Tinubu administration communicates with the world. Joining us for this discussion to react to this development is public speaking and communication coach Joyce Daniels. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
What we've seen is a mixed reaction by Nigerians to how this interview was conducted. Those in support of the current administration believe that the journalists badgered Daniel Bwala. Others, who are strong critics of the administration, argue that the show was structured in that format and he was well aware of what he was getting into, and that what he showed was a lack of preparedness on his part, or maybe because there was nothing really to defend. What side of the argument do you tilt towards?
I totally agree with the Nigerian people who say it was head-to-head. It wasn't a food show. It wasn't a cooking show. It was head-to-head with Mehdi. So Mehdi will bash you, and you'll be ready. Come ready with your facts and your details. But the biggest problem is it is difficult to defend a faulty product. That, I think, is one of the biggest challenges. If he wasn't coming ready to say, yes, we agree, and these are the matters at hand, then he was just going to tell lies and embarrass himself like he did, unfortunately. There is also the argument that maybe there is still an honest streak within Daniel, and that's why he was unable to outrightly lie about a few things. But then I was like, what do you mean by outrightly lie? There were so many lies, and by the next day, it was all over the place. I will agree with Professor Saul, who just spoke before me, with I'll take a part of his phrase where he said, sometimes there's a lot of bullying. So it's like the administration feels, we can get away with whatever it is we want to do. And I think, in my opinion, that's part of what we experienced with Daniel at head-to-head.
Okay, as a, public communications expert and one who helps others to develop this skill, what skill do you think was lacking, especially from one who represents the #1 citizen, President Bwala Tinubu, or you could say the most populous nation in Africa, populous black nation in Africa? What are the do's and don'ts that Mr. Bwala forgot to carry in his knapsack? Or better still, the do's and don'ts he forgot during that preparation video where they were prepping for this entire interview? Did they miss out on something?
They missed out on truth. It is always premised on truth. You start with truth and conviction. So they missed out on finding the truth, so that whether the truth favors the government or not, then they could say, yes, this is the truth. Not that Amnesty International lied, this other people lied, those ones were drunken. No, truth first. Number 2 would be, of course, fact-checking, which I'm not sure they didn't check. I just believe they felt they would get away with it. That's what, for me, is a bigger challenge, because Daniel, based on precedence, is a good communicator. He's one who tends to speak from a place of knowing. So I don't really think it was the intellectual research that was missing. It was the truth that was missing, that was based on conviction. And the numbers, the facts, the details were not favorable to the administration that he represents. That, in my opinion, was the biggest challenge.
Now, Joyce, Mr. Daniel Bwala, in the wake of all of this, released a personal statement addressing the fallout of his interview. He said the Al Jazeera head-to-head team reached out. They said they were going to discuss the economy, policies, and security, but they made the interview about him, and he didn't know they were going to ask personal questions. What's your response to that? Is that a valid argument?
If he had watched even just 2 episodes of Head to Head, he would know that it's about the person on the seat, not just about the topic. Yes, you're defending the topic, but Mehdi would ask you questions about you and your stand. That is his format. So that is a faulty defense, once again showing that he wasn't prepared.
All right.
Or then they're still lacking truth.
Yes, earlier we had 2 guests, Mr. Paul Ibe and Dr. Oshinowo, to speak on the subject matter of this interview. And in defense of this administration, as well as in criticism of Daniel Bwala, Dr. Oshinowo spoke so passionately about the fact that he does not believe that Daniel Bwala represents President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and that if we want to hear from the president, we should listen to Bayo Onanuga instead. So from your perspective as a professional, if he's there on that platform, they argue that he's there to redeem his image because he was a strong critic of the current administration in the past years, and that he was there on his own to, redeem his image. Do you agree with that?
I do not agree with that. That's throwing out the baby with the bathwater. In fact, that's throwing him under the bus. He bears a title. He represents the God. I mean, that's a mess to say. And whoever said that is just falling into the same trap that Daniel did, saying he doesn't. Shut it down. He represents the president. He speaks on his behalf, and this is not the first time. End of story. I will allude to a comment I saw on X I think it was on Daniel's post, where somebody said, oh, maybe this was the administration's way of getting back at you for all the nonsense you had said before. So now go, shoo, go and show yourself and be embarrassed. On a lighter note.
Well, we'll go on a quick break. Like you said, he's a special advisor to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on media and policy communication. So the question is, if you say he wasn't there representing the president, then who appointed him special advisor? We'll go on a break.
Very good.
When we come back from this break, we'll be expanding further on the conversation. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. We're looking at the controversial interview that has put not just the current ruling party on the spotlight, but of course has continued to put Nigerians on the spotlight and gotten us to start reacting and talking. Our guest is actually a public speaker and also communications expert. Joyce Daniels joins us. So before the break, you had talked about ignorance not being a reason for you not to be ready to face a head-to-head interview. But I also want to ask, whether you track back or not, Daniel Bwala was a former member of the People's Democratic Party. And whether you like it or not, he was a spokesperson for former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. And he spoke a lot, he said a lot. But what do people need to learn about saying things at a particular time and getting it stored on social media as a public speaker, and in the future wanting to change it again? What is the thing that public speakers need to learn, especially those who speak for the president, for a country? What do they need to learn about the use of social media? Because right now it seems like it was Daniel Bwala in the past, tracking back like Spider-Man in the future and coming to attack him again.
Stick with truth, regardless of who you represent. If indeed, when he was on the opposition side, there was no attack to his life or there was no militia, then stick with the facts, stick with truth. Because when you do decide to change your mind, which we are allowed to as humans, then you will refer to the truth. Politics is not or should not be the reason why you sell your soul to tell lies, regardless of the divide which you stand on. And if you are going to make allegations regardless of who you represent, then try to make sure it is true and founded. Should you also change your mind, like one of Daniel's colleagues has done recently, he said, yes, those were my thoughts and views at that time. Now I have evolved based on A, B, and C evidence. Stick with truth. When you speak online or speak in the privacy of yourself, stick with truth. It is what leads to conviction, and it is what gives you credibility, regardless of the divides you represent.
I'm glad that you've mentioned about how this can be handled, because I did want to ask you, how better do you think Daniel Bwala should have handled this interview? Because many are criticizing the fact that facts were presented to him and he could not substantiate those facts, even when he went against what was obvious, obviously presented by Mehdi. But also, do you believe that Daniel Bwala was the best person to have gone on that interview, especially because of his adversarial history against the government? Should that have been a factor taken into consideration?
It is tough for anybody to defend a faulty product. We have a terrible situation. We're in a terrible situation in the country. There are too many gaps with the government and with the questions that were asked. I'm not really sure that anybody in the government would have come out with a better outing, because truth, once again, which some of the facts were real that said 2 in 3 Nigerians do not even believe in the government. 10% of Nigerians didn't. Less than 10% of Nigerians voted. So what are you really going to defend? It will come out just as bad. If the product is faulty, almost any defense will come out in the same way.
Now, from a public relations and image-making perspective, I believe the first check, I want to ask you to do a quick checklist on certain things image makers should have, looking at the persona. I know you said it's hard to defend a faulty government, but the government will push back and say, look, we're not faulty. We're doing something about it. I mean, if we're going to focus on the issue, number one, the persona should not be guilty of doublespeak. So the person, if you look at their history, they've not said A and then reverse in their mind. But looking at the Nigerian government, we're a great nation and good people. I remember that PR campaign. And I don't think the government is just folding its arms and allowing people to run with whatever narrative they choose to. I believe there are positives coming out of Nigeria, and I'm speaking overall, looking at everything in the country. I mean, there's some positives. What should the image makers have, and should there be just one channel of communication? Because we've seen government SSAs come out to say one thing and then they reverse that decision, or there are multiple people speaking on behalf of the government. What are the do's and don'ts?
Do number one, speak truth from the number one citizen in the country. Imagine that we had a situation where we hear from Mr. President every month or every other month speaking to what exactly himself and his administration are doing. Imagine the optics where we are not hearing that there is another hospital visit to another country or the other. Nigerians will gradually begin to believe when there is constant singleness of message starting from number one citizen. Someone will say, but you usually should not put your principle first out. We're in a dire case. So context matters. And there I agree with Daniel. We will start with number one. Then we would ensure that there would be consistency of messaging across board. This is number two, meaning everyone who is a voice for the government must of necessity be put in one room together, virtual or in person, and ensure that we are all clear as to the facts. We should know what should be said and what should not be said. And of course, number three would be prepare worst case and best case scenarios. If you're going into an interview of any kind, if by some chance you're not told what questions will be asked, then you will simulate at least 50 to 100 possible questions from all areas. You are more likely to come out on top than not. I've said three things. From number one, two, consistency of message, and number three, prepare.
All right. Communication forms public opinion, whether we like it or not. And Nigeria has also grappled with some negative impressions that the foreign media now has about us. International platforms like Al Jazeera, of course, shape global perception. So what would you say the impact of this interview will be on the global scale? How do you think that this would, one, erode public trust maybe, and how do you think the West, the foreign media and foreigners will perceive Nigeria after this interview?
The answer is in the question. It's not a good look at all for local or international bodies, not a good look. It will further make people laugh at the Nigerian state. Like it happened live at Head to Head. At some point, the people were laughing like, oh my God, what is this? That is just a picture of the multiples going on in other places around the world. It's not a good look at all, unfortunately. How is it going to be redeemed? That's another big question. Are they going to send someone else to Head? Or would there be some PR campaign that would start showing number one, speak more? Would there be a PR campaign that would show more voices, giving credence to the wins of the government? I'm not sure, but I would still retain, as a proud Nigerian who believes in the greatness of our nation, if we are in a faulty situation, it is difficult to fix. It is the faults that need to be fixed first before the look of the faults.
Okay, let's talk about this current administration, the current government. It seems like its communication aspect has been declared faulty. I mean, just like a faulty light check on the dashboard of a car. We've seen this from the get-go, from the start. At first, it was the former spokesperson to the presidency who was said to have gone on leave of absence. And then later on, it was said he had medical issues. But, FIG, the news source and other media outlets in 2024 declared that he was fine. I'm talking about Ajurin Gelale. We seem to have seen communication breaches between him and the senior special assistant on media going head to head. He would release a statement, he would take it back, by another go, release another one, all at the same time. So there was communication overlap like we saw back then. And this has led to firing. Apart from Ajurin Gelale, we've also seen this happen in, Meghan Markle. We've seen that happen in big institutions where communication experts or spokespeople are fired. Can this cost Daniel Bwala his job?
Oh, yes, it can cost him his job. I would wonder why it would cost him his job, because any other person would have run into the same challenge, but it could cost him his job. And if it does, it's tough. Whether it should cost him his job is a totally different story. If the government would want to come clean, then they'll pull in and reel in all their spokespeople into one room and do a recalibration, because anybody else who comes into this faulty chasm will fall into the same trap. From the most senior to the ones on the streets, they all need to get their acts right, which was number two, I said. Come into the room and ensure that there is oneness of messaging, which is not, you can't create messaging if the product itself has challenges. So we'll keep going around it. There's a big challenge. Fix the challenge, and then talking about the solutions will be easier.
Now, talking about challenges, Joyce, before I ask this question, I would advise you to send a check, an invoice to the National Orientation Agency and the Ministry of Information, because you'll be doing some consultation from them in answering my question. Nigeria has challenges like other countries. I mean, China is a country of 1 billion people. India is a country of over 1 billion people. But we have such a negative image globally. The perception is not good. And President Trump also worsened it by saying, now disgraced country. But if you look at that, in order not to fall for the danger of a single story, there are other positive things that come out of Nigeria. Africa celebrates our Afrobeats. 2 young Nigerians won the BAFTA Awards a few weeks ago. Great things happen. I mean, businesses, people thrive in Nigeria. And the government has also come out to say, when you say things like Nigeria happened to you, should not be it shouldn't have negative connotations all the time. So from an image point of view, I know you always stick with the line that it's hard to sell a faulty product, but I don't think that's our entire story. What should the national orientation and Ministry of Information do to at least begin to, maybe it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy if we stop cursing and saying Nigeria is terrible, the worst country in the world, and all of that, to look at some of the positives and, you know, sway opinions and also really do the job that matters.
You made reference to good people, great nation. Why did that campaign fail at some point? As much as it was catching on, but at some point it became a challenge because the majority of Nigerians still did not have access to food, water, education, basic rights of citizens. So if 2 Nigerians win BAFTA award, I take off the price of Gary. That's the bigger issue. I will celebrate it. You will celebrate it. But your gate man will say, which one concern me? These are the real issues. If I cannot buy petrol, since I still use a generator, how are you telling me to celebrate Afrobeat? Afrobeat now to calm my body down when tension be on me. So we will celebrate what is good, but because the majority of Nigerians are still in the grind, which is what Aisha Oshori was referring to in that interview, saying when the majority of people are still in poverty, it is difficult to have a PR campaign. National Orientation Agency can never fly to success a campaign when so many are still out of school, when insecurity is still raging, when the basics are not met, and when government officials are flying all around the world and trying to change whether the beavers can upload current status of results or not. So it will be a mess. It's difficult to sell if the majority, the foundation of truth is not fixed. I am pro-Nigeria all the way. You will never hear me say something negative or curse the country, because where else I could go? But we will fix what should be fixed, and then we can tell better stories. Unfortunately, or fortunately, that's where we are.
Joyce Daniels, thank you for joining us this morning and giving us the expert communication perspective of this conversation, the reality of what it is, and maybe what could have been done differently. We look forward to speaking with you again. Hopefully, they'll come to you for communication masterclass before the next.
They really should.